Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Joshua Barnes, live from the Firstpost studios. First, let's take a look at the headlines. A Bangladesh court sentences former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to death for crimes against humanity, delivering a verdict just months before national elections. Hasina calls the charges against her politically motivated. Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te warns that China has severely damaged regional stability by escalating its feud with Japan over comments on Taiwan's security. The EU warns that Europe is not ready to counter a Russian drone attack and must urgently adopt Ukraine's battle-tested systems. The remarks come after NATO jets intercepted Russian drones over Poland and the Baltics. Britain threatens to impose visa bans on Angola, Namibia and the Democratic Republic of Congo unless they accept the return of irregular migrants ahead of announcing sweeping new asylum rules. And Ecuadorian voters deliver a major political blow to President Daniel Noboa, decisively rejecting a referendum measure that would have allowed US forces to return to military bases in the country. Hello and welcome. Today we begin with our show with the hopes of peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as it has signed a peace framework with the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels, who have captured mineral-rich cities in the country's east. The new deal, called the Doha Framework for a Comprehensive Peace Agreement, was signed at a ceremony in Qatar. It was attended by officials from both warring sides and the representatives from mediating nations, the United States and Qatar. The DRC government said the framework has 8 chapters. These include the freeing of prisoners by both sides, humanitarian aid, the return of displaced people, protection of the judiciary, and monitoring the ceasefire. Meanwhile, the M23 delegation said the agreement didn't have binding clauses and would not change the situation on the ground. It added that the deal contains text on the root causes of the conflict. The rebel group said these causes will be negotiated before reaching a comprehensive peace agreement. Even though a new framework for peace has been signed, US President Donald Trump's envoy to Africa cautioned that the entire process would take time. He called the signing a launchpad for the truth process.
Yes, people were expecting to see probably some immediate results on the ground, but this is a process, and there are many, many angles to it. So this will take time, hopefully not too long, but we have to allow time, we have to give the chance for the parties to work through these mechanisms.
Qatar has lauded the agreement as historic and said that 2 out of 8 protocols have already been signed, while implementation mechanisms for the remaining would be negotiated in the coming days. Doha added that mediators would continue efforts to achieve peace on the ground.
The 2 parties will also agree that the government will establish an independent committee to promote reconciliation, emphasize accountability for crimes, and make recommendations on appropriate compensation within the framework of the transitional justice process.
The latest signing ceremony followed a series of agreements signed in recent months, including one in July and another in October, which involved monitoring of a subsequent ceasefire. But it failed as both sides accused each other of breaking the truce. The path to the July deal was laid by a truce deal between the governments of DR Congo and Rwanda in June. Kinshasa seeks the withdrawal of Rwandan troops from its territory. However, Kigali says that the troops are deployed for security purposes, claiming that it could open once the Congo-based FDLR rebel militia linked to the 1994 Rwanda genocide is disbanded. The M23 conflict in DR Congo has been going on for more than a decade. The group took up arms again at the end of 2021 and seized swathes of the eastern part of the country. The rebels, with the support of Rwanda, seized key cities Goma and Bukavu and went on to make gains across North Kivu and South Kivu provinces in January. The surging violence has triggered a spiralling humanitarian crisis and has killed and displaced thousands of people. Well, for more on this, we have with us Stella Agara, who is a governance and security analyst from Nairobi. Thank you, Stella, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's first look at a comment made by the US. They say that this deal will still take time to be enacted. Is there a risk that it falls apart completely?
I think let me first acknowledge that it's a breath of fresh air to get any news from any conflict that there is a peace framework or peace agreement of some sort that has been signed. We do recognize that the process in DRC or between DRC and M23 has not been concluded, but at least the fact that two parts of the agreement have already been signed is progressive. Now, considering the hostility from both sides, and I think, Joshua, you have reported effectively that there are threats from both sides, including the fact that M23 is saying that there are certain components that have not been included. It basically means in between, as the work continues, there could be some hostilities that may arise as a result of either the negotiations, which they have promised will happen within 2 weeks for the remaining 6 protocols, or within the period if some other conflict matters arise. The truth is that what is being fought over in that region is mostly the resources, and the interest for those resources continue to exist. And for this reason, it's very risky to drag on negotiations. I think it would have been better if all of this could have been done in a much faster way and permanent agreements be reached. But this is the nature of peace agreements. I mean, there's a huge risk of falling apart. We also have to put into consideration that there is a third force in all this. It's not just about M23 and DRC, but we also need to look at the undercurrents in this conflict and the people who want to benefit from this. It's in the interest of the merchants of war for this conflict to continue as long as they do, because for as long as this country is in war, those merchants of war will continue to benefit and continue to enrich themselves.
Yes, and Stella, building on that, you of course mentioned resources, but what else do the Rwandan-backed M23 rebels want, and also the DRC, in this conflict, and how could that impact the peace proceedings?
Let me start with the Rwandan-backed M23 rebels. This is actually Rwanda flexing in order to be able to continue accessing the resources from DRC. If you are a nation like Rwanda that did not have any minerals, does not have much that they need to sell to the world, they only sell services most of the times, you definitely be looking for a way of survival, you definitely be looking for resources. So they also have a huge interest in the resources in the area. They definitely are looking for control over the minerals, or at least control over the space where the minerals are. Unfortunately, they choose not to trade or negotiate, but they choose to take it by force. They are interested in wealth accumulation for purposes of sustaining their nation, but also wealth accumulation because there are certain individuals, businessmen, majority of them capitalists, who are also sponsoring some of these activities, and they want to continue benefiting from the war. DRC is interested in controlling their own minerals. DRC has spoken unequivocally and said they're interested in nationalizing their minerals and their national resources in order for it to make money for the nation. DRC wants access to the business end of these minerals without having to compete with external interests that come to fight for those resources and sell them, especially in the black market. DRC wants to be able to control resources for the nation and for the posterity of the nation, and to be able to actually have a nation that looks like it's functioning. It's an era for a nation that is this wealthy to be struggling to find even money for holding elections, to be struggling to feed their people. DRC as a nation also needs to pay their benefactors. You will note that when the US came into this conversation, they said that they are going to support DRC on condition that they will get minerals in exchange. So DRC definitely needs these minerals in order to be able to pay for the services that they're receiving or the protection that they're receiving from the US now. DRC also needs to protect its people and the human rights of the people in their nation. As a government, they have a responsibility to do that, and you only do that if you have resources to maintain the defense system that will protect them.
Yes, and Stella, of course, we've spoken about the M23, we've spoken about the DRC government, but let's now finally end with the people, the civilians. How important is it for those living in war-torn regions in the eastern DRC that peace is achieved and achieved soon?
Joshua, I'm glad that you're asking this question, and probably this is the most important question in this entire conversation. The first thing that the people of DRC need is basically the ability for self-determination. Are they able to participate in an election to choose their leaders? Are they able to decide the rules by which their nation will be governed by a constitution of their own, by rules that they create for themselves? Are they able to have an identity? Because every time there's a conflict, many of them are displaced. Majority of them do not have a place that they call a permanent home because they have to keep on moving. The people of DRC are looking for comfort. If you're that wealthy, if you have that kind of mineral resources, then they should be able to enjoy the kind of lifestyle that kind of resources should afford them. Unfortunately, somebody else in this world is enjoying that lifestyle, and the people of DRC are not enjoying it. The people of DRC are looking for wealth. They're looking for enjoyment. There are people who love entertainment a lot, and they would have loved to use those resources to build a very comfortable life for themselves. They're looking to nurture families. Joshua, it's very difficult to give birth to children in such a place because you don't even know if they're going to be able to live to their full time. You don't even know if they're going to be able to have a livelihood or be in that nation for as long as conflict continues. So these people are definitely calling for a time when DRC will be allowed to live in peace. The people of Goma, the people of North Kivu and South Kivu will be able to live in peace despite the resources that they continue to carry on behalf of their nation and this continent. They are also looking for that security that comes with knowing that they're living in a peaceful place and that there's not going to be any form of insurgency. The last thing that those people are looking for, and I'm glad that this peace framework is talking about, is reparations. They have been attacked severally, they have lost a lot of property, they have lost lives, and they're looking for truth, they're looking for justice, and they're looking for the culprits of the war to be punished for the crimes that they have committed against them.
Yes, absolutely, Stella. Of course, positive momentum towards eventual peace, but still uncertainty on the ground. Thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Thank you for having me.
We'll now shift focus to Tanzania, where President Samia Suluhu Hassan has finally broken her silence on the loss of lives caused due to violent protests that rocked the country during last month's elections. Here is what she said.
Despite the fact that elections were held, there were incidences of violence that caused property damage, loss of life, and threatened the security of the country.
This is Hassan's most public admission yet, and it came after weeks of accusations of repression. Hassan won the October election with almost 98% of the vote. Her two main rivals were either jailed or barred from running. An election without opposition led to massive protests in Tanzania. Allegations of election rigging added fuel to the protests. Opposition groups claim that more than 1,000 people were killed by security forces. The United Nations says the toll is in the hundreds. But the government still hasn't released official figures on the death toll. Now, Hassan has announced a national inquiry into these deadly protests. She says the commission will dig into the root cause of the violence.
The government has promised that within 100 days we will begin constitutional reforms. We will continue taking steps to address the challenges of the union. I will form a reconciliation commission to address the causes of these killings, and we will also establish a commission for dialogue so that together we can build and preserve our nation.
What stood out in her speech was her tone on young protesters. Hundreds of them have been charged with treason, a crime that carries the death penalty in Tanzania. Hassan says many were swept up by the moment and wrongly influenced. She then pushed for leniency, urging prosecutors to separate genuine offenders from those who followed the crowd.
I realize that many of the youths who were arrested and charged with treason did not know what they were doing. So as a guardian, as a mother, that is why I am directing the security and defense agencies, especially the Director of Public Prosecution's office, to filter the levels of mistakes. And for those who followed the crowd, then let them talk to them and then let them go. Let them go to their parents.
Her speech comes amid a tense political environment. Hassan took power after the death of President John Magufuli in 2021. She briefly opened the political space, but crackdowns returned soon after. Opposition leaders say they have faced abductions, harassment, and targeted killings. Human rights groups say their teams have been intimidated and their devices were seized during investigations. Because of this, international pressure is now mounting on Tanzania. US senators have condemned the election as state-sponsored repression. The United Nations has also raised alarms urging more transparency. But President Hassan says Tanzania must learn from the crisis and decide how to run democracy on its own terms.
As a nation, we continue to learn and improve ourselves. So then all of us in our unity should use this opportunity to continue to learn. Let us improve ourselves. And let us agree on how to run our country democratically, based on our cultures, traditions, and customs, and not those that are imported.
For now, the inquiry into these deaths remains a promise. The citizens still don't know how many people died, or hundreds remain behind bars. Whether this commission delivers accountability or becomes another political shield, the world will be watching Tanzania's next step for answers. Next, we move to South Africa, where President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced that there will be an investigation into the quote-unquote mysterious arrival of 153 Palestinians from Gaza into the country, who seemingly left Gaza without knowing their final destination. The group of Palestinians arrived at OR Tambo International Airport and were initially denied entry, spending almost 12 hours stuck on the plane, with local authorities stating the passengers did not have the customary departure stamp in their passports. But after intervention from a local charity, and because of what President Ramaphosa called the government's empathy and compassion, most of the passengers were allowed to step on the South African soil.
We cannot turn them back. Even though they do not have the necessary documents and papers, these are people from a strife-torn, a war-torn country.
Upon arrival, one passenger spoke with local TV channel ENCA, stating he faced death on a daily basis and that he was lucky to be here. South African authorities are giving 90-day visas to the 130 passengers who stayed within South Africa. 23 took onboard flights to other destinations. The Palestinian ministry have expressed deep appreciation for South African people and the authorities. But the circumstances of the plane's departure from the Middle East and travel to South Africa remains unclear. The Palestinian embassy says the group left Israel's Ramon airport, flying first to the Kenyan capital of Nairobi, before then arriving in Johannesburg, seemingly without prior notice. But the mystery surrounding the group doesn't end there. Israeli authorities say the Palestinians had left the Gaza Strip, crossing into Israel after approval was given from a third country to receive them. Initially, the nation wasn't named, but Israeli officials have since said that the third country was in fact South Africa. And in another bizarre turn, the Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs then warned Gazans of networks that are seeking to mislead and remove them from their homes.
The ministry calls upon our people, especially our people in the Gaza Strip, to exercise caution and not fall prey to human trafficking, to merchants and companies of blood, and to agents of displacement.
Now, there has been no official reaction to this incident from the Israeli Foreign Ministry, but the United States and Israel have previously pushed to move as many Palestinians out of Gaza as possible. Negotiations took place with several countries in the region to accommodate the Palestinian population. There is a lot of uncertainty in this instance, but some critics have suggested that a transit scheme could be operating for some time under the radar. Amid the chaos, Jordanian King Abdullah and Pakistan's Prime Minister vowed zero tolerance on displacement of Palestinians from Gaza. This situation remains shrouded in mystery and uncertainties, but what it does is highlight a potential operation to remove Palestinians from Gaza. Whether it is relief from war after 2 years of intense fighting or exploitation of Palestinians remains unclear. But as the fragile truce in Gaza holds, dialogue and scrutiny continue as the fallout from this devastating conflict lingers on. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid the coups and the crises, there are many positive stories from Africa that often get overlooked, but not on this show. Shifting our focus to Libya, where another migrant tragedy has unfolded off the coast of Alcoms. It's the second deadly incident from the same region in just 1 week. At least 4 people have died after 2 overloaded boats capsized in the Mediterranean. Nearly 100 people were on board. The Libyan Red Crescent said its team launched a major rescue operation early on Friday. The first boat was carrying 26 Bangladeshi migrants. 4 of them didn't make it. The second boat had 69 people on board, mostly Sudanese, including 8 children. Against all odds, everyone on the boat made it out alive. The boat set off from the city of Qoms in Libya, about 120 kilometres east of Tripoli. The area has become a regular launch point for smugglers who load people into shaky boats that are never far from waters. The route crosses the central Mediterranean with the southern tip of Italy as the nearest entry into Europe. This is not an isolated incident. The Mediterranean has become a graveyard for people fleeing poverty, war and collapsed economies. Earlier this week, 42 people went missing after another boat from Libya sank. They are all presumed dead. And in one of the deadliest incidents of 2025, a boat fire in September killed 61 Sudanese refugees. The United Nations says more than 1,700 people have already died on Mediterranean routes this year alone. Libya remains the main transit point, as its coastline is largely unguarded, a consequence of the country's collapse after Muammar Gaddafi's fall in 2011. Smugglers have now filled the void. They charge thousands of dollars for boats that can barely stay afloat. After Saturday's rescue, the Libyan Red Crescent says its team moved survivors to safety. But the real question is why people keep risking this crossing. Here is the reality. The war in Sudan has pushed millions out of their homes in West Africa. Armed groups continue to terrorise entire regions. Economic failures in South Asia have left families with nothing to fall back on. On top of that, droughts, food shortages, and almost no legal pathways into Europe, pushing people into desperate choices. For many, getting on these boats feels like the only option left. The European Union and the United Nations say they're pushing for safer routes and stronger patrols. But with crises deepening across Africa and beyond, the Mediterranean remains a dangerous gamble for those chasing a chance at survival. That's it on the show. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching.